the impact of the disturbance in the Middle East, the outrageous, horrific actions of Hamas in Israel on Jewish Londoners. We know from previous events when there are disturbances in the Middle East, it does lead to, as night follows day, an increase in hate crime in London and across the country, in fact, as well. And so over the course of the last 48 hours, working with communities, working with the police, we've sought to increase police presence in these communities where Londoners are feeling frightened for no other reason but they're Jewish. Unfortunately, overnight, you're spot on. There's been evidence of, criminal actions against Jewish businesses in Jewish communities. And I'm not sure if your listeners who aren't Jewish understand the trauma. If you're a Jewish person and you're seeing a Jewish business with a window smashed, the trauma of people trying to sow division in your communities that you've lived in your entire life. And that's why it's so important those of us who aren't Jewish provide solidarity, support and empathy, but also the police are bearing down on those responsible for these sorts of criminalities and incitement. So, there is no place in our city for hatred. There is no place in our city for those dividing communities. And today there are going to be protests in London, as you know. And it's incredibly important that people understand that, yes, of course, there is a right to protest. There is not a right to incite hatred. There is not a right to divide our communities. And the police will be bearing down on anybody acting in a way that's criminal.
So you think there will be a rise in anti-Semitism in the coming days?
Look, I just know from my experience, both as the Mayor of London, as a former communities minister in the Labour government, that, unfortunately, across the globe, I'm afraid, when there are disturbances in the Middle East, and you saw the actions of Hamas in Israel over the last 48 hours, it does lead to an increase in anti-Semitism around the country. It's the oldest form of hatred known to mankind. And that's why it's so incredibly important we understand the ripples of fear coming from Israel as a consequence of Hamas's actions.
What's your advice then to synagogues, to Jewish businesses? Should they be stepping up their security?
Look,
and are you offering to help with that?
Yeah, look, one of the things that we've sought to do over the last 48 hours is, I've been reaching out not just to, Jewish communities, but directly to the synagogues, the schools, and other institutions. And firstly, look, I'm not sure if your listeners realise, if your place of worship is a synagogue, if the school you go to is a Jewish faith school, you already have security, right? Because I'm afraid what we know happens in relation to a lot of Jewish people. And so it's really important we recognise, as it is, there's a huge amount of security in our synagogues, on our Jewish faith schools and in Jewish communities. And there's a wonderful organisation who work closely with me and the police called the Community Security Trust. And so we're increasing the support we give to Jewish communities. Reassurance is incredibly important. High visibility police is incredibly important. I don't want any Jewish person to not leave their home because they're scared. I don't want any Jewish person not to go to the place of worship because they're feared. I don't want any Jewish parent not sending their child to school because they are scared. So I don't apologise. There'll be more police officers in our communities where we are concerned. But I say this, to those of us that aren't Jewish, this is an opportunity to put out the hand of friendship, to show support, to show, solidarity to our communities across the country who are feeling really frightened.
And what do you say to an MP in London, Jeremy Corbyn, who won't condemn Hamas for what was clearly just a horrific terror attack?
Look, I'm not going to speak to Jeremy Corbyn. I'll speak generally about the point. Look, I think it's possible to be pro-Palestinian people and be outraged at the actions of Hamas. Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation. I can't think of anything anybody could say to justify the actions of Hamas. There should be unequivocal condemnation. But also, here's the point. How does what Hamas has done lead to the outcome of a peaceful two-state solution coming sooner rather than later? How does it not lead to an escalation of violence? How does it not lead to another generation of people living in fear and suspicion? So, it's for others to explain their own personal point of view. But I think it's perfectly consistent to be somebody who doesn't like what Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing, and to be pro-Palestine and Palestinian people, and to condemn what Hamas have done.